Hello, and welcome to So You Think You Can Rule Persia, the podcast where we rate and review all the kings of Persia from Diocles to Yazdegerd III. I'm Sariel, and my pronouns are they, them.
I'm Umberto, and my pronouns are he, him.
And I am Plumas, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hello, Plumas. Welcome.
Hello, Plumas.
Hello, Sariel and Umberto.
So good to have you here.
Lovely to have you as a guest once again.
Lately, I've been saying that sentence, Umberto and Sariel, or Sariel and Umberto from So You Think You Can Rule Persia podcast so many times. I am very glad to be here. I missed you, guys.
Oh, we
missed you too very much.
I'm so glad that you had some time to join us again and have a combined episode. I'm excited.
Yes, for those of you that don't know, just to explain who Plumas is and where she comes from, well, Plumas is at the head of the Las Plumas de Simurg project, which is a bilingual English and Spanish project, which she shares her love and interest for the area of Iran and the Persianate and Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent. And she is an actual historian, unlike us. She has a PhD in art history, so
she is certified.
She knows what she's talking about, so that's good.
Apparently I am, yeah. And thank you for the lovely introduction. And it's always great to find other projects to share. I think this is something I said already the first time we did a combined episode, but I just love all the creators to be here talking about also the Iranian plateau and the Persianate, because it's not that many of us, so we must stick together.
Yes, be all friendly, all tied together, which is nice, because, there's lots of nice people there.
Yeah.
We'd hope. I don't know. The ones I've met have been nice. We'll see.
Yeah, same.
Oh, you were talking about all the content creators. I was thinking about the people in question, like the Sasanians,
no.
The Parthians,
the kings are not necessarily nice. They are
exactly.
They are interesting.
I've seen your charts. I know the ranks.
Yes.
Listen,
your favorite is still winning.
We do give points for being absolutely terrible. So what could you expect?
That's the reason why Darayavush is still crowning the top. Yes. I hope he doesn't go away.
I'm scared for him now that the Shapurs are coming, but we will see.
But...
Oh, give me some drama, please.
Khosrow, Shapur.
Oh, yeah.
It's good.
I'm still rooting for that, Achaemenid team, always.
He's definitely going to be up there, but we'll see how far he sits. But yeah, so for today's episode, just to introduce everybody on what we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking about Mazdayism, because now that we're going into the Sassanid period, religion is going to be a lot more important than it has been previously. It's going to involve a lot of kings. The priesthood is going to be very relevant. So I thought it was worth inviting Plumas on so that she can tell us a bit about what is Mazdayism? What does it mean? Why does it matter that these people follow?
So wait, Umberto, we're not rating a king today, are we?
No,
we can rate Yazatas if you want to, although there's a winner.
That's a separate thing.
There's already a winner because he naturally is. He was conceived to be so. So I can give you a top of this one.
Very exciting.
A lot of the, what is this called? The literature about a king or the myth about a king. Most of them have some sort of, yes, you get to rule by divine power. So I don't know how reliable that is.
The far is the Khorenar is there, definitely. The far is this divine glory to rule, ever present in the Shahnameh and ever present in Sasanian sources as well, because they do love that concept. And also, Umberto was right. The Sasanians, it's not that they were more spiritual than other dynasties, because that would be, I believe, a little bit incorrect, a little bit brave to just admit that because we have written sources about the practicing of spirituality during the Sasanians, that doesn't imply that all the dynasties pay less attention to their own spirituality, especially regarding the Parthians, the Seleucs, or the Achaemenids. Definitely, in these early societies in ancient Iran, spirituality, and it's the way of people connecting with the world, with the surroundings, with the questions that we all make ourselves at some point in our lives. Where do we come from? Why are we here? Is there something else after? And so and so. But it's true that the Sasanians are known for expressing more vividly, at least verbalizing, putting into words much more in much more an intense form the sacrality of the many different religions they practice, because Mazdayasna was only one of them. This is something, I think it was something important to say from the beginning, that Zoroastrianism or Mazdaism, we'll get into the debate of why saying one thing or the other.
There.
It's okay. It's not something, it's not wrong saying Mazdayasna, it's not wrong saying Zoroastrianism. It's okay. But what I was saying is that it was not the only religion under the Sasanians in the ruling areas. So I'm avoiding so intensely saying the word empire because I have a friend that would kill me if I say Sasanian Empire.
Oh.
It's a beef we have. I use empire for almost everything and he doesn't like it. So I need to have that debate with him.
Can you go a bit more into
word
that,
empire.
actually? Why would that be incorrect? Or why is that incorrect in his opinion?
He has a point because the imperator is a Roman title. Right. And it would be as me scolding someone for calling Simorga Phoenix. Okay. Phoenix is a word. Imperator is a word with attached specific circumstances. And an imperator has an imperium. There's some subtleties about the fact that about that word that I don't control. But basically is that imperium it needs different circumstances to be correct. And basically what we use empire for is just a big expansion of land ruled by the same person.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Mongol Empire, the Yuan Empire, the Sasanian Empire, the Visigothic Empire.
Right. But then I guess you could argue that is just one of the definitions of the word. So there's the more technical definition of is applied to this particular, the Roman Empire, which is where the word came from. Or there's the definition that it has acquired after some time, which is we just use it to describe a big expanse of land under one ruler.
Exactly. I think that is exactly correct. Also, I have to admit that I like to use the original words, so to say, if they are. For example, I refer to the Sassanids as a dynasty because that's what they were. Same with the Achaemenids, or same with the Parthians. It's just instead of saying the Achaemenid Empire or the Persian Empire, please don't say the Persian Empire. There's multiple Persian empires out there.
That makes sense. As we're discovering in this podcast.
Exactly. If you've done your homework and you follow up to the date, so you think you can rule Persia, you've discovered this far that there's not just one Persian Empire. And all your books and magazines and video games and films that talk about the Persian Empire, they should provide a date because there's many.
We have changed cultures. We have changed, of course, rulers. And yeah, to be quite honest, I sometimes struggle a lot whenever I do see things related to like the Persian Empire, because now I know a bit about it, and so I'm just confused because I'm like, well, do you mean the Hellenistic, like Macedonian Empire? Do you mean the Parthians? Do you mean the OG Persian, like very early, and and then I'm like, I am confused.
I am very glad you're in my team for these now, because when people ask me, what can you tell me about the Persian Empire? Which one? Are you talking Achaemenids, Sassanians, Safavids, the Karakoyulu, the Ilkhanids? Like, there's people there, so it's just...
But, let's try also not to be pedantic about it. I feel like the people who... Not that you're being pedantic, but I'm just like, I can see myself being like, well, actually, the Persian Empire shouldn't be called an empire. I mean it more in the sense of...
But do you have this feeling? I think, generally, when people refer to the Persian Empire and talk about the Persian Empire, they're mostly talking about the Achaemenids.
That's the way I mean,
normally it would be... unless they specify and say the Romans, so maybe they could be referring to Sasanians. I have this feeling that in called like pop culture, when you say the Persian Empire, you're talking about the Achaemenids.
Yeah, that's usually what I've seen as well.
Because the Greco-Persian Wars.
Nobody remembers the Seleucids or the Parthians. Sometimes the Sassanids, but...
You do. You remember the Seleucids.
Remember them. They were good times.
Were they?
Well, they had elephants.
We had some good times.
They for sure were there.
And I think mostly they refer to Persian Empire in contrast with the Macedonian Empire and Iskandar.
Yes.
Because there was one empire and then Iskandar came and then there was another empire.
Yeah.
So in this case, I think it will be a very interesting debate, like using that word or not. I fear that I could not bring anything to the table though regarding the word empire. I use it because it's comfortable. Yeah. But other people might have very interesting things to bring to the conversation, be it in favor or against.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing to think about, at least. Cool.
Also, circling back for a moment to what we were talking about before, which I found really, really interesting, Plumas, as you were mentioning, that while we're here now to talk about religion in this particular era, that, of course, the time period before also could have had major religious practices, and it's not necessarily that now the people living in under this rule, this new dynasty, suddenly became more religious or were forced to be more religious, but it's that we have the records to show it, because obviously we only know what we have some sort of, notes about, as we very well know from a lot of rulers where we have no sources, and therefore we are very much like, something happened in this period, I guess.
Yeah, this person was there.
Yeah, something must have happened. People must have had their lives, and culture must have changed, and battles must have been fought, but we can't really know.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it's really interesting that now religion comes to be, or this particular religion comes to be, a part of the government in like a more specific way, in the sense of the rulers choose to make this a key component of how would you say this? A key component of the
self-defining narrative.
Yes, exactly. What defines being part of this kingdom or of this empire, right? Like
their identity.
Exactly, the identity.
Very closely.
It's a huge part of the identity, the national, or not national because it's not a country, but the.
But their own vision of a nation, of the territory, the influence is religion plays a major part.
Which it didn't before. Before it was like, everyone has their own religion and their own practices, or at least we do not have the records that show that this was a huge part of the identity of these people. In fact, the identity was that everyone was free to practice whichever religion they wanted to practice, most of the time. And they were, it was a very diverse.
And we know the Achaemenid kings because we have written evidence from Xerxes and Darius and Artaxerxes, that they believed in Ahura Mazda, and we have inscriptions in Persepolis praising Ahura Mazda, and there's definitely a spiritual component. But truth to be told, in comparison to all the dynasties and all the cultures that came later, the Achaemenids were not so adamant about their own religion, you may say. Apparently, Xerxes was a very spiritual man.
Xerxes was slightly more than others, but yeah.
Yes, because he is a pan de Dios. He's a pan de Dios, misunderstood by everyone out there. I'm going to defend Xerxes until the very day I die. But what we have now is a new we could even dare to say, and please with pinzas, with a pinch of salt, there's a new social class, which is the priesthood. Exactly. And this did not really happen before because there were priests, but they were not so well organized. And also, if you guys are interested, and also the listeners of the podcast, there's an open article by Philip Krayenborg. I'm really sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that surname, but it's a really nice article to read. It's called Zoroastrianism under the Sassanids, and it's on academia.edu. So I could send it to you if you want to share this with the people in the podcast, because it is fantastic. I will send you guys the link, and yeah, it's there's a presence of this new society group, which is the Magi or the priests, and they have things to say about the managing of the society, because they had money. They had money and they had the power. This is as simple as it is. Yeah. Exactly. And I think it's very interesting to understand, like, as a period. But to me, I would really like to think, what is it exactly you want to focus on? Because I feel there's two dimensions of this episode. One is the religion with sources and mythology and world building. Yes, you can use the word world building for talking about religion and mythology. It's not just fantasy appropriate. There was world building before Tolkien, Sanderson, and
makes sense.
And Song of Ice and Fire. Exactly.
Of course, that's what mythology is all about. That's what the religion is all about. It tends to it wants to implement certain moral values and also give you an idea of like where the world came from and why you're in it and where you're going to go once you're no longer in it. That's yeah,
exactly. I couldn't say it in a better way. So or the role of this religious class in society, which is something I control a little bit less, but I can give you good sources on.
Yes. No, I think that right now, so the list of questions that we had so far were mostly around the world building. So what exactly happens? And then there are a few things about how the priesthood and the religion in general interact with the Sassanids, and we will be able to cover those more in depth during when we find the actual kings. Like we're getting close to a lot of stuff.
The real
so
kings.
I'm very excited. Yes, that'll be exciting.
The real kings, not those we've had so far, which are all fake and made up, right, guys?
According to the Sassanians, yes. That's the thing. According to the Sassanians, everything prior to them
didn't count.
Exactly. It's just we're restarting. We're resetting the clock, and now is when history begins with us. Now,
yeah. Even though fact, they quote or they did try to grab legitimacy from like back in the day. Was it all the way to like
they're trying to go back to the Achaemenids or for them it's the Kyanid kings. It's not they're trying to say, oh yes, we were the second cousin 3 times removed of Darius the Last, so that's why we were actually in charge.
But think of it this way, and this is fascinating, and yes, I am opening the Book of Kings drawer because think about it this way. The power move, as Ariel was putting it, was so powerful that nobody knew the Achaemenids were a thing. They were forgotten for centuries, for almost millennia. They were forgotten, and they were the Kyanids, because that is the way the Sasanians had described them, the Kyanid kings. And this is the way they appear in the Avesta. This is the way they appear in the Khodainame, and this is the way they appear in the Shahnameh, because to them, the Sasanians were so self-entitled to a construction of the world that they erased dynasties prior to them. They cherry-picked what they required in order to build up their own, say it with me, self-defining narrative. And they did. And
That's
this is the
fascinating.
base for the Book of Kings. I'm going to clap away from the microphone because it's just, this is so powerful literature-wise and culture-wise.
That's incredible.
Also, sometimes I get questions. I know that the Parthians in the Book of Kings, Azizam, the Achaemenids barely made it. The Parthians were a myth.
Very difficult.
The Parthians were straight up just erased.
Just burned to the ground. They're on a mural being defeated. That's their only source.
Yeah, they're at what's the name of the palace in Sogdiana? Yeah, Panzigen. They just appeared smashed under the hoofs of Rostam's horse. Like that is a Parthian. That being smushed there into mashed potatoes, that one's a Parthian.
That's fascinating. I am trying to recover from the fact that right now I feel like I am in a science fiction narrative where I got to live history as it was and then jumped into an alternate universe where nobody remembers what actually happened except the main protagonist and like the audience who's following along. And so now I have all of this information of all of these other kings, and I'm coming into a society that doesn't think that that's how it happened anymore. And that actually...
It's incredible.
Because of that, we also didn't know that that's how it happened for a long time, I guess, until we actually discovered more sources, which I don't know how we did that.
It's incredible.
We did discover many. That's why the Parthians are so difficult.
I mean, Persepolis even changed his name. It's called Takhte Jamshid, the throne of Jamshid, who is Yima from the Avestan sources. That is mental. You are assuming that this magnificent city was built by a king who commanded both Div and angels and made the Jinn and the Div work to build this city, because you're not able to understand, or like the cultural heritage is not telling you that there was actually another dynasty that lived here.
Right.
Because the way we do history is completely different now. And of course, that's why the first Sasanians were like, people did things. They're not that important, but there was a king that, like Umberto was saying, I was related to from my mother, my mother's sister, who was married to another. And it's like, what? What is your lineage connection again? It doesn't really matter. Like, I am somebody of importance because I'm pretty sure some things translated into the cultural background, meaning there was something there in the legitimacy discourse. But also, and this is me rambling, you can cut this if you want to. Now that I think of it, there's so many cultures from the Achaemenids to the Sasanians. The jump is so great that the time lapse is very, very big.
Yeah.
So imagine how the cultural discourse of legitimacy was modified and enriched with other traditions that they didn't know. It was just there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I really like this topic. And the Kayanids, the non-existent Kayanid kings is like,
It's fascinating.
I mean, Fereidun is a Kayanid. Come on.
It's lovely.
All the lovely is a Kayanid. Gaiomars is a Kayanid. Tahmuras is a Kayanid.
Hello, this is Editing Plumas, and I realized once we finished the episode that I said something that is terribly, terribly wrong regarding the dynasties of the Shahnameh. I was mistaking the Pishtadian dynasty with the Kayanian dynasty and naming kings as Kayanian that are in fact Pishtadian. So let me explain very quickly how it goes. The first mythical primordial dynasty in the Shahnameh is the Pishtadian dynasty, and to it belong kings such as Kayumars, Hoshang, Tahmuras, and so on. But after Garshas being the last member of the Pishtadian dynasty and these mythical kings, we move to the Kayanian dynasty, which starts with Kai Qobad and follows with other kings like Kai Kavuz, Kai Khosrow, Kai Lohrasp. You can identify these kings because they always have the Kai, meaning ruler, at the beginning of their name. So I was actually saying praising the Pishtadian dynasty, but made it very. I got confused and mistook them for the Kayanians. So sorry for that, and hopefully this makes the point a little bit clearer. Thank you, Umberto, for allowing me to include this digression, these fe de ratas in the episode.
And if you don't know, I'm not sick. This is not a cough. I am listing kings from the Shahnameh. You should really read it. You lovely people, lovely listeners of the podcast, you have access to translated Shahnameh. Read them, please.
Also, Plumas does some lovely readings of the Shahnameh, so you should definitely go and check those out.
Right, if you don't want to...
Thank you, I rumble a lot.
If you don't feel like reading it yourself, or you'd rather process information in audio form, since you're listening to this podcast right now, that's a great suggestion.
Yes, with somebody giving you
guys.
very useful and entertaining context.
Yeah, it really varies, because I seen my registrar can go from a really detailed explanation of why it is important that a king dismounts and walks towards another king, to call everyone in the scene mamarracho and just go about it. It's just
You get to learn some lovely Spanish words.
That's what you are.
What's not to love?
Oh yeah, for sure. They so far they know mamarracho and pan de Dios, because Seyabosh was a pan de Dios.
Pan de Dios is excellent.
God's bread, literally translated.
Yes, the bread of God, which means someone is really, really good, like pure, righteous, good, and must be protected from everything.
Could never do something
wrong.
Ever.
So I guess we could start with a bit of the world building. So if Plumas, you could give us a basic overview of what is the Mazdayan worldview? Why is that a complicated question? Please tell us. Who is Ahura Mazda? What is going on?
Explain, I know nothing.
So first, like off microphone, I was asking Sara and Umberto what they really want me to answer, because it is a little bit tricky learning about the world building of the Zoroastrian mythology and religion, because the sources are very, very spread. Let me put this in a different way. Zoroastrianism was already being practiced during the Achaemenids and the Parthians. It was not a new religion the Sasanians just picked up or invented. That's the reason we call it Mazdayasna, because literally that translates as yasna, the liturgy of the religious performances of Mazda, who is Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, the head of the Zoroastrian pantheon. In this early stage, some scholars deem a little bit more correct saying Mazdaism, because the presence of Ahura Mazda is super important, is very relevant, is always there. And later, with the Sasanians, it's not that the presence of Ahura Mazda fades away, because he doesn't. He's the head of the pantheon. He is the absolute deity of it. But with the influence of other monotheistic religions that have the figure of a prophet, being Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, this prophet, who is Zarathustra or Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, as you say in German, that one. So to me, the Persian one is the beautiful one, because it's Zarathustra. It sounds very powerful. But if you say Zoroaster, which is a Greek form, is also very correct, and everyone else is going to understand you. So it's these figure gains more relevance, and the liturgy changes considerably. Again, we're talking about centuries of a religion evolving. And a little side note, what I think is one of the most beautiful things about Zoroastrianism is that it is still alive, because it's still a religion that's practiced. So we're talking about religion that has millennia of existence. It's existed for thousands of years. At these earlier stages that I was talking about with the Achaemenids, and perhaps also the Seleucs and the Parthians, some people estimate a little bit better to call it Mazdaism for the importance that was put in Ahura Mazda. Then from Sasanians onwards, we use Zoroastrianism, but do not feel overwhelmed with all these terms. Zoroastrianism is correct. Mazdaism is also correct. And Mazdayasna is describing literally what you're doing is also correct, and it is the original word they use. So don't worry, any of them are fine. And these millennia, this millennia-based religion was ever-changing. And it is only with Sasanians that there's a joint effort between the authorities and these priests we were talking about before to put all these sources like written down. Like to sit down and really write all the sacred texts, because they existed before, but they were mostly orally transmitted. Sorry. Why is that? Why do people not write down what they need to repeat in a liturgy? Because they remember.
This tends to happen a lot in religion, where we as in future, civilizations, lose a lot of context because a lot of it is never written down. Most of it, like, purposefully never written down.
Yeah. It's sometimes, this is something I like to remind also in my streams or when I talk to people, is that sometimes civilizations or cultures don't make use of a tool because they don't require it, they don't need it, but they know it exists. For instance, we know the Achaemenids knew how to write. We have multiple sources written by them, but we don't have sacred texts. Why? One of the reasons could be because they didn't need it, because the liturgy was performed orally and constantly. So the priests and the people attending, they didn't require to read what they had to say. They knew.
How wouldn't you know this?
Yeah.
That everyone knows. Like, have you been living under a rock? What do you mean?
And then with the Sasanians is where we have these first form of the sacred text, which we call Avesta. And there's multiple Avestas, and there's multiple world buildings and multiple descriptions of the world, because these started around roughly the 6th century, and it continues on until the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th century. So there's a lot of incorporations, and the farther they go in time, the more you can see this influence of the monotheistic religions. And this is how Zoroastrianism was transformed from a very early stage in which it was more order facing chaos, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It was not a confrontation. It was just a coexistence of the two concepts. People understood that in order to be alive had to be death. The sun needed a moon, and so and so. So this cyclical view of the world transforms slowly but steadily. It opens and converts in a straight line with a beginning and an end. Why? Because monotheistic religions believe in a timeline that is a straight line. So I'm really sorry for all this very long explanation. I'm trying to recoger cable. I'm trying to... Yes. Okay, so Ahura Mazda is the head of the pantheon. First question to be asking ourselves, can we say that Zoroastrianism is the first monotheistic religion that ever existed? No, Zoroastrianism is not monotheistic. It never was. Not even today. And I know practicing Zoroastrians. They say it is more. Now it could be considered monotheistic, because in here we open the debate: is Catholicism monotheistic, given that there's so many saints and figures to worship? This is something that we call henotheism. In henotheism, there is a major primordial deity. In this case, Ahura Mazda. These deities at the top of everything, and behind every question, he's the answer to it. But underneath him, there's all the deities that are worth of worshipping. In fact, this is what their name translates as. Worth of worshipping means yazata. Beautiful word. And also there's the Ameshespenta, who we can talk a little bit more about if you want to. So what I want the listeners to understand is that there were multiple deities that were being worshipped. Therefore, we cannot talk about monotheism. Not even after. Because with the Sasanians, given that this is where you are in the podcast, all the deities are going to gain so much popularity. And the Sasanians had their favorites. And you've seen them. You've seen her already, because I know you have. And all the deities, these Yazatas, gained more and more popularity and had their own temples and places of worship, and you can find them on the sources. So we have this pantheon, very rich, full with people. There's a lot of people there. There's, I think, 100 plus Yazatas, because everything, every concept can be a Yazata. And then we have the 6 immortals and Ahura Mazda. And if you want to read a little bit more about world building, there's a beautiful book. It's called the Bundahism. And the Bundahism is literally an encyclopedia of creation. And it tells you about these places in this collective imagined geography in which the forces of life and nature exist. And also tells you that in Zoroastrianism, they believe the world was like a box.
Of chocolates? Sorry.
Possibly. I mean, since we are inside the box and chocolate is inside the box and exists with us, it is technically a box of chocolates. But the sky was like a lid that closed.
Okay.
I'm not making this up.
No, I mean...
And underneath, there was water. But in the middle was also water. And then you have the 7 climates, which the Sasanians kind of like push into. And like, now you're fitting here. That's the reason why it's complicated talking about a single Zoroastrian world building. I have no idea if I answered that.
And here I was expecting religion to be simple and straightforward.
Oh, God.
As always.
When, Ariel? When did it happen?
What do you mean this is not how it works? Always.
No. We need to, well, after, when we hang up, we need to chat a bit, just for a moment.
Yeah,
Tiny.
exciting stuff. And okay, so that's a good, interesting overview. And I was also curious to see what happens on the opposite side of Ahura Mazda. If you could spend a couple of words on who lives there.
Oh my God, yeah. You mean Angra Mainju? Sorry.
Excellent cackle.
Yes, I really like his presence. So, all right. Do you remember I just said that back in the beginning, there was order versus chaos. So the concept of order was represented by Ahura Mazda, and then the concept of chaos was represented by Angra Mainju. That literally translates something like the darker spirit, but not dark in the sense of like dark, like grim, dark, aesthetic, dark academia. No. It's dark in the absence of light, kind of dark, like night. No light, dark. Like, these dark spirit represents the opposite of Ahura Mazda, and the same that Ahura Mazda has the Yazatas and the Fravashis and the Immortals to aid him. Angra Mainju had the Daevas, who are the spirits connected to drought, winter, the wind. There's like 1 million Daevas in the world, like 1 million. But see how everything was prepared to turn this religion into a conflict of good versus evil. It was there. Yeah. Like the
groundwork was there.
The main ingredients were later. Yeah. So this is Angra Mainju and the Daevas, who are the other spirits. For example, we would say if a spirit could produce rain, we have Tyr, who is a Yazata connected to I forgot the name. It's Canopus. Sirius, the stars, also known as Canopus. The star would bring the benevolent rain to make crops grow. The opposite, if the rains were so hard that they would drown the crops, that would be a Daeva. Or if we had a drought, that would be also the work of a Daeva. The cold that freezes crops and kills plants, that is also a Daeva. And the mythology of the new year, Noruz, that is in the Iranian milieu, has a very powerful connection with also the Daevas and the cold and the winter and the snow. So they're there. They exist there. And they're important. But it is only with the Sasanians that they start to get personalized and feared. There's one diva that I really like that is called Visaresha, and their name literally means they who drags. Because
good.
this is the creature in charge of dragging the souls from the bodies to bring them to the home of the worst purpose. It's not hell, it is the home of the worst purpose. So, and I really like it because it's frozen. You know, hell is normally burning in this Judeo-Christian background. There's flames that deal with the souls of the sinners. In the Zoroastrian late thought, this idea of a place where the wicked go was cold, completely immersed in the absence of light and frozen, because fire was esteemed so positive in Zoroastrianism. Which brings me to question number 2. Can we say that Zoroastrians are fire worshippers? No, they don't worship fire. The fire is not a deity, but the fire is the spark of life. And the fire is the manifestation of Ahura Mazda's life into the world. Everyone has a little fire burning inside of themselves.
That's nice.
It is what brings us life. So they take care of the fire, but they don't worship the fire.
That makes sense.
Very nice. And okay. So you've mentioned several Yazatas. Which is your favorite? Please tell us about them. Who is it?
This is cheating because I like a lot of them.
Tell us about
Hard
a lot of
decisions
them.
must be made.
No, it's not a hard decision. I am playing Roof. It's Madayazna. He's my favorite. I love him. He is fantastic. He's the Yazata that embodies victory.
Always
That's
a good one
him.
to have.
He is the idea of victory. And the reason I love him so much is because he comes to Zarathustra in 7 shapes. He presents himself in 7 shapes. A lot of them are animals, but one of them is a sort of a bird of prey. Some translations say raven, some others say hawk, but it's a kind of a bird that's a predator. And this bird has some feathers. And legend has it that if someone was to get a feather from Madayazna and rub it around their body, they will be protected and no harm could ever come to them because they are protected by the spirit of victory. And this legend moved in time and in the local folklore to the Shahnameh. And this is where we have the feathers of Simurgh being an amulet of protection for Zal.
Oh, I see.
It's very good.
Ta-da!
I like that. That's very nice.
We've come full circle.
Also,
Look at that.
something. It also lies different. Something that's different from the Yazatas and other mythologies is that they don't interact directly with humans at all. They don't like humans.
Yeah, me neither.
I
Sorry.
mean, they in the sense, we are normally the first exposition of mythology for people is Greek mythology, and gods and demigods and creatures are always there. They blend with humans, no problem. They live with them and they interact. Then we have Egyptian mythology, which would be like the high fantasy of the genre. Gods interacted with themselves only. And then Norse mythology, in which, again, deities interact with themselves only. The Yazatas, they exist. They present some of themselves to Zoroaster, to Zarathustra. And there's some legends about them, but the mythology is not constructed that way. If I am
Sorry, you said
I hope I'm making sense
in Norse
of what I'm
mythology the
saying.
gods don't interact with humans, but they do.
Oh, they do? I mean, I'm no expert whatsoever. I'm not sure about
well,
it.
there
I
are
know some
myths
of the
of-
stories I learned, they are about gods.
Yeah, there are myths of Odin walking the earth disguised as
Ooh.
wanderer or some sort of the word eludes me. essentially a tramp.
Like a
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
beggar,
And then either tricking people or like testing them.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
Well, I
funny.
might be.
Yeah, I
I
didn't
might
know
be
that. See,
I might be wrong. I haven't read up on my Norse mythology in a long time.
Oh, trust me, you know much more than me about Norse mythology. But the stories I know are about, the giants
Yes,
and
there is a lot of
how
stories of just
Thor and
the
Loki.
gods within themselves,
Yeah.
just figuring things out for
No.
themselves.
And we are used to that kind of narrative, meaning that use of mythology was very narrative. I'm telling you a story, so you
Yes.
learn the morale of it. There's a lesson to be
Right, I
learned in
see
these
what you
stories.
mean.
While in the Zoroastrian, in the Avestan texts, not really. They're there. They appear before Zoroaster and they explain who they are, and that's basically it. Sometimes Zoroaster, sorry, the writer taking the words, like playing the words of Zoroaster, says that they do these or that. For example, when he talks about when Zoroaster talks about Erefragna, he explains this is his tasks, this is what he do, and this is how he takes care of humanity. But there's no a narration, there's not a beginning and an end. That's another indication of how they were not primarily conceived to have a beginning and an end. And I hope I am making sense. I hope I'm explaining myself because it's a little bit difficult. But the point would be that it's different. The way of constructing narrative and creating mythology is very, very different. That's why you don't usually, if you Google Iranian mythology, it would point towards the Book of Kings, because there is this kind of narration that we are much more used to, and it's very common to other mythologies. Japanese mythology is very story based, and also the South Asian mythology is very story narration based. But in Zoroastrianism, there's not that much of a narration. There start to appear stories when influenced by other cults. The faith requires of these stories. Just you need to. One thing you need to think about is that a religion changes according to the necessities of the people, or the followers of this religion. So at some point, this Mazdan code required of these stories and these narrations, and this is later text in which you see how the stories are put together differently. But we don't have such thing as the Yazata Berefragna being the protagonist of a story, or performing a great deed. Or no, it's just there. If you wish to read all of this, you can.
Hooray!
Because everything, everything is translated and for free. In my favorite page in the whole Internet of Things is avesta.org. Everything. You have all the Avesta there. Consult it. It's free. You are going to enjoy it a lot. And that's a part in which you can learn about the Yazatas, because you may be thinking, if there are not stories, how can I learn about them? How do I read about them? And this is a word that is super complicated for me to say in English because I'm not a native speaker. Hymns.
Right.
Oh, hymns, yeah.
Hymns and hymnos.
Yes, hymns.
These hymns written to the deities, to the Yazatas, to praise them, to describe them, to explain them to other people. This is where we learn about the Yazatas, and many of them have their own, and it's very, very nice reading. So you can find them, all of them, in avesta.org.
We will link that.
We will
in the
add
notes.
links for that in the website, so if anybody wants to consult that, please do. It sounds really cool. So that's very nice. Thank you. And, okay, so another question we could ask is, are there any specific practices that come out of Mazdayasm? Anything that is done differently than what you would expect? Any specific method of worship or any other societal behavior that is there?
Something that really strikes people when you see about it, like when you explain this, is, well, there's the praise of fire and the importance of fire. It's something that calls the attention a lot, which is, I understand why it would be like, oh, this is different, the people worshiping fire. They don't worship fire, but they gather around the fire, and fire is important. But it's a symbol. You can take it as the qibla, the qibla wall in a mosque that the Muslims pray towards. That's a symbol that is pointing towards Mecca, or the crucifix in a Catholic church, for example. You pray towards the crucifix because it's a symbol of your faith. Same happens with the fire. But the practices change a lot throughout these centuries of devotion, as you can imagine. One practice that is also very famous is the laying down offerings for the different immortals and Ahura Mazda. This is called the Heptad, meaning the 7. And these 7 would be Ahura Mazda and the 6 immortals. And these offerings were put together in front of an altar, because you would first of all address the Ahura Mazda, then the immortals, and then the Yazata. The day was what's the word I'm trying to use here?
Dedicated.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, it will come to my mind, and if not, it was a lie. This day was dedicated towards. Apparently, and based on the sources, Zoroastrianism advised on having a vegetarian diet. They were very, very intense about that. They did not consume that much meat. That, again, that isn't the sources. We cannot take for granted that people did not eat meat based on just the written sources that we have. First, because there's a lot of time in between these sources put together, and second, because sometimes circumstances are stronger than the faith. So I don't know, but that is a detail that people normally are surprised about. Another one is the exposition of dead bodies.
Okay.
Yes.
You have my attention now.
Yeah, I know. I saw your eyebrow right a bit, like, oh, I'm listening. So the earth, the soil, is an immortal. She is an immortal. She's someone in Zoroastrian belief. The earth is sacred. And I'm trying to find on Google this image because I want you to see it. I think it would be... I will send it to you. So Spentarmaiti is the earth, and the earth is sacred, meaning that the earth should not be corrupted with any humors or liquids emanating from humans. Okay. And a very despised and horrifying liquid humans produce is blood. Blood is the big no-no in Zoroastrianism. It's like, no, not today. And not today. So if the earth was to be stained and dirty with blood, it was terrible. They could not allow this from allow it from happening. That was not ¿Cómo
allow
it
to happen
in English? They could not.
Yes.
Thank you, Sariel. Again, English is not connected today.
It's fine.
This what you're hearing is ChatGPT.
The AI got in there and is scrambling your brain.
Yeah. So what they would do is they would take the dead bodies and bring them to a place, normally a wasteland or somewhere that was not fertile soil, and leave the bodies there and allow nature to do its job. And then the predators and the scavengers will come, eat the meat, and leave the bones. When the bones were clean, professional people, because this is not anyone, they were professional dead and corpse handlers, they will get there, retrieve the bones, and keep them in these ossuaries, because in Zoroastrianism, the soul is thought to believe inside
the marrow,
the bones.
Okay. Nice.
There's a word. What is the word for
the marrow?
The marrow.
Yeah, marrow.
Amazing.
This is where the soul was to be
Which
stored.
kind of,
over time
checks out with what we know of physiology, because that's where you keep your stem cells and where you make your blood. So
yeah,
you know.
Cool. They had a point. They had a point. Yeah. Over time, these places of exhibition, at first, it could be anything. It could be just a wasteland, a bunch of rocks. But over time, there was specific architecture for it. And these are called dachmas, or the famous towers of silence, which were towers in the outskirts of cities with a platform that was slightly inclined towards the center so the humans could descend and be piled up there. And you can, if you Google Towers of Silence, Yazd in Iran, there's 2, 3, and a little fourth one that is almost destroyed. These belong to the 19th century. They're very late dachmas, but they're very good examples of what these places would have looked like. The first mention to a dachma that was specifically being built, we have it in a letter from the 9th century, written by the Zoroastrians of Samarkand, asking for permission to buy the dachma, and they were given permission. So, there's evidence of this being practiced a lot. Also, connected to this is a figure of the vulture. The beard or golden vulture in Zoroastrianism is very important. These are very important birds because they clean the natural cleansers, and they were thought to be deities and sacred because they come, they eat the flesh, they drink the blood, and they leave the body spotless.
Nice. Okay, thank you. That was very interesting.
That's fascinating.
Good to know.
It is. I mean, the afterlife in Zoroastrianism, I could give you info to full 3, 4, 5 episodes. It is incredible. The concept of the afterlife.
If you want to know more, sadly, since we do not have 4 episodes for this, just look up Plumas de Simurg online and go ask her.
Yes.
She'll be happy to tell
She'll
you.
definitely do interesting stuff about it. It'll be good.
I mean, it's a nice religion to learn about because when you are led to the afterlife, if you've been good, you are led by dog spirits. And I love dogs.
Very
That's
nice.
nice. I like that.
Yeah, it's in the details. It's
That's how they won you
details.
over. I see.
Yes.
Yeah, there's nice dogs in this bridge that you have to cross. Well, not you.
Yes.
Your soul has to cross a bridge. And if you've been good, there's these doggies. I always imagine. Have you watched the film The Song of the Sea? It's an animated film about a brother and a sister.
I haven't finished it, sadly, but I do know it because I'm a big fan of The Secret of Kells, which is by the same people.
Yes. So you I don't know if you remember, but there's these spirit dogs that appear at some point in the Song of the Sea. I always imagine these dogs to be like that, like translucent, big, mastiff-like dogs.
Sounds
It's like, yes, please, all the time, anytime. Yes.
All right, so let me
The
recap.
best heaven of spinach.
As the person who's actually learning all of this for the first time, we've learned that, what we knew from before, which is that with this new dynasty, religion is going to be intrinsically linked to the identity of the words today are just not there, man. Of the region. And also is going to be linked to the government and is going to have power because there's going to be a new class of citizen, which is the priests, which are going to have a lot of influence in what is going to happen politically. We've learned that regarding the afterlife and dying, they don't want the fluids of the flesh to stain the earth because the earth is sacred and it's an immortal being, so your bones must be cleansed of.
Yeah, she's one of the 6 immortals.
Your bones must be cleansed and then your bones are put away. The concept of hell is frozen wasteland, or the concept of where bad people go after they die.
Exactly.
It is not a monotheistic religion, even though it does have a main god, but also lots of different gods and spirits for different things. And it's also very centered around fire, and fire has a very good connotation because it's like the spark of life.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anything. Oh, yes, and that their stories, they don't focus
think
on
you're good.
individual stories with a moral to teach, as in like, oh, this is what happened, and now from this we learn that you should behave this or this other way, but it's more these deities do not interact with humans necessarily, or do they? Well, it's...
They don't
Yeah,
in
they
a direct
don't
way.
appear-
Meaning, for example, Berethagna, one of his
They don't-
shapes,
yeah.
exactly, one of his shapes is
so
a
they don't
camel.
appear
And he can be
and as deities and interact with humans as such, but they might like interact with the world, as you said, in different shapes. And instead of particular stories with a moral, it's more of an idea of these entities exist, and the world works the way it does because they exist.
Exactly. And they will guide you towards what you have to do, because it's something is also super important in Zoroastrianism is telling the truth, the asha, not lying, the real truth. To be honest is like the thing. So all these deities explain to you how to pursue this path and be righteous and not lie. It is very funny because Darayavush the first, in his speech, he is and I quote, a defender of the truth. And he uses that word. He uses the word Asher, which is like the Zoroastrian, the Mazdian derived word, like the Asher of Ahura Mazda. So it's like, is
yes,
your mirror
it's
moving?
fine. I just realized it dislodged from like the upper part of it, so it was like wobbling. It's fine. It's not gonna fall.
Fine.
I
Good
just
to know.
just a little poltergeist.
Oh my
and-
god, there's another djinn living in your hood. Oh my god. How are you so chill about
Because I
it?
know why it happened. Because I
Always
fixed it
happens,
this
it's there.
morning, and I didn't fix it well enough. It's all fine. I was wondering what the noise was, but like once I saw it moving, I was like, oh okay, it's just that. That's okay. It's fine.
Not my circus, not my gin, not my circus, not my gin. Okay, so I don't make it funny.
Also, yeah. So they value the truth. You were saying, even though then,
Yeah, for them.
Dada is
Oh, sorry.
terrible.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but for them, every person was pure in the sense of the children were pure. They were not naturally inclined to lie, which is very curious to say about kids.
Because
But-
I don't know if that,
but-
but I get the purity and the
And then-
innocence of you have been in
yeah,
this
exactly.
world for
And as
not
they
that
and
much time.
as humans, yeah, and as humans, you had to choose what to do. And also, we haven't like I wanted to mention now that we are finishing also if everything escaped of what we said about Zoroastrianism, if things were a little bit complicated, which I get, remember these three things: good thoughts, good words, good deeds. This is the Zoroastrian creed. This is the three rules a person has to live by, because everything starts with a good thought, then it transmits to a good word, and then you do good actions and perform the good in the world. One of the deities, for example, one of the sacred immortals is the good thought. How beautiful is that? You have a deity only dedicated to a nice, good thought, because to them, everything starts with a good thought. And contrarily, these deity has its counterpart, which
That's
is the
a
bad
thing
thought,
I wanted
because
to add.
everything starts
I
with a bad
forgot,
thought. Yes.
in my summary, it's a religion that is very well set up for having an evil versus good dynamic. There's always a counterpart in the sense of yes, but also in the sense of an equilibrium. Of there's only one thing because there is the absence of it, and so you have
Exactly. The closer you are to the Achaemenid times, it's much more order versus chaos, and then it evolves. And by the time these sources were put together, you can read the words evil and righteous.
So there's a moral, there's a moral
of-
that comes into it of like this is correct and this is incorrect, or like we should strive towards this instead of
Definitely.
that, which I like much less than the feeling of there's an equilibrium and you can only have one thing because you know the absence of it. Not in the sense of, oh, there's a
Yeah.
silver
I think
lining,
if
or
you're
like, oh, you need to
interested
be
in-
sad to also be happy. I don't believe
Yeah.
like that is just so people can justify.
It's a little bit too black
yeah,
or
that's
white
just so people can
situation,
justify
yeah.
suffering, and I'm not about that. But I understand the equilibrium.
If you're interested in that,
you know.
if you're interested in that, there's this thought that Zoroastrianism really came, and this is why nature plays such a major role in the religion. It came for an animistic type of religion. The animistic religions are those that believe spirits and this essence of life are inside everything in nature around it. So this is what we think it could be, like the germ, like the first seed of Zoroastrianism. And then also there's this super interesting debate in which the reform. All right, so Zoroaster, we don't know if he really existed or if he was created later, because as we were commenting before in the episode, religions needed a prophet and they created Zoroaster. We don't know. If he had been alive, he had undertaken this massive reform, quote unquote, in the religion, and then separated himself and what will become Zoroastrianism from the Indo-Iranian religion. And then there's a separation. And interestingly, the Devas, who are the nice entities in Indian and Indo-Iranian religion, become the bad guys. And they are the Daevas.
Interesting.
I always thought it was really fun how that happens, how there's just this switch between the two, and it just changes out.
It's quite radical as well. It's like, no, from now on, we're not going to believe anything our neighbors believe in because we are different. Like, okay.
Not even the good parts.
So
Like,
it's
you just
No, none.
some of the good parts. For example, Berethragna is a cousin of Indra. If you like Indian mythology, Indra is a god of lightning and also represents this concept of victory, of not being able to be defeated. So Berethragna is there. And also, it was my favorite, but we haven't mentioned the Sasanians' favorite, who is Anahita.
Yes, Anahita is very
And
good.
she is, I always call her the Beyonce of the Mazdian
Okay.
pantheon, because she queen, she legend, she titan, she is incredible. Leyenda Titana Pantera. She is the Yazata of the sacred waters, because there's this, in this contrast situation that Sariel was explaining, there is the salty water that's there, not so nice, and then there's a sacred water that Anahita protects, and she appears in multiple reliefs because she is the bestower of the crown and the right to rule, alongside her, I don't want to say father, because Ahura Mazda is not the father of the
Creator.
Yazatas, but somehow but he would be like the creator of us all, so some kind of dad figure, I don't know. But alongside with Ahura Mazda, you can see Anahita bestowing the right to rule in Ardashir and in many other kings. And it's really interesting how she's there, literally standing as a witness, and also handing the ring of rulership, of kingship. It's literally a ring. It is a metal ring with some beautiful laces and ribbons, and she's giving it to the king, meaning she is the bestower of legitimacy. And that's the reason why the Sasanians like her so much. It's like, this is our deity, this is our Santa Patrona, and she says, we are the rulers. See, I made a relief and everything, and I put it up this rock so everyone can see that this picture I took of Anahita and me. And then with other people come after, it's like, you see that? That's my grandpa with Anahita there.
the gods, the
because I am
literal
the
gods came
grandson.
down to say that we should rule. So if you
Who
dare,
are you to go
They-
against
exactly,
the
if you
gods?
dare to doubt us, you are doubting the gods. And can you live with that?
Exactly. You put it perfectly. I couldn't have done it better. In fact, they go a step further and they represent Ahura Mazda riding a horse. There's debate about that one. In the Naksha Rostam, there's this, not Naksha Rostam.
Naksha Bostan?
In
Dakhe
Dakhe
Bostan,
Bostan, there's a relief of two horse riders meeting, and some people believe it's Ahura Mazda and Ardashir. Some other people think it's Ardashir and another king. But the thing is, Ahura Mazda is there. Horse riding or not, there is Ahura Mazda in another relief. Also, there's Mitra, who is a very famous deity because he is the Yazata of the sun. I always think about him as like a sort of a sibling to the other Yazatas. Again, these people just pop out of the blue. They exist.
Family dynamics, human family dynamics wouldn't really apply.
Not really. And you don't have these beautiful stories in which, for example, we have the story of Aphrodite and how she emerged from the seas. No, Anahita was just there.
Which makes more sense for
she just exists.
A deity, a being that is immortal and powerful.
Yeah, she has this sense of unreachable. She's also she appears in some stories of later texts in which you have this narration and she's there and she talks with one of the most famous human heroes who is called Fereteona, who in time will be known as Fereidun. And she talks to him but this is the very later text. It's very interesting seeing all the stages of the Avesta, which is the sacred text of Zoroastrianism, because you can see the evolution and the needs they were feeling. So
that's very nice.
All the Yazatas of your interest could be, we've said, Berethagna, the victory, Anahita, the sacred waters, Mitra, the sun, Rashnu, the justice, Sarosh, the obedience, and Bayuata, the winds. Mm-hmm. So you see, there's not these, they're all elements. They're also concepts. So
whatever was important, I guess.
Practically everything.
For that culture.
But practically everything could be Ayazata, so...
And you mentioned just before the interaction with sort of Indian religions and that sort of area. How is their relationship with, for example, Christianity and Islam? How does that work?
Okay, so definitely it works because there's communities of these two religions living close in the not Islam, because Islam doesn't appear until the 7th century, but definitely there's Nestorian, do you say in English? You have Nestorian Christians living close in Syria. There's this hub of Nestorian Christianity. Also, the Judaism has been there forever, and there's communities of Jews living under Sasanian rulers, and there's also communities everywhere. So the way they interact really depends on the moment we're talking about, meaning that while the Sasanians are in power and Zoroastrianism is their main religion, I am not sure if there are communities living in the Iranian plateau, but there must have been.
There were a lot of communities living in the Iranian, especially Mesopotamia was a mixture of everyone at the same time.
Because I don't know much about that. So yeah, there were these communities, and people talk, they interact. The Sasanians were not that adamant about religious purity. Like the whole idea of a state was based on the religion, but there was no problem that there were others. And with the rise of Islam and the appearance of Islam, what happens is that this religion pushes Zoroastrianism, although there's communities that stay in Iran and live there. And we have notice of that because, for example, the person working in the Shahnameh before Ferdowsi was a Zoroastrian. And I mentioned these letters, and they appear in census and in sources. They were there. And there was this knowledge of them. People knew they existed and they knew their practices. Unfortunately, in the 16th century, with the appearance of the Safavids, that changes. And the Safavids are much more religious-centered, and they want to maintain this purity in their own state and in the land they rule upon. So they prosecute the Zoroastrians. So we can say there's two big moments of exile, of running away of Zoroastrians. The first one would be when the Arab armies arrived to Iran and the Sasanian dynasty falls. And the second one would be in the 16th century, which is like all the migration, and they moved eastwards and they settled in India, in where today there is the biggest community of Parsis or Zoroastrians in the world. So, but there's still communities. I mean, they are maintained. Nowadays there is representation I forgotten the proper word, but there is political representation of the Zoroastrians in Iran, for example. And when I was in Yazd, I was with the Zoroastrian community. They're still there. They still do the practices. The fire temples are open to people, so you can go. It was a very interesting experience. Very cool. I really liked it. But they've always been around somehow. This monotheistic religion, especially Judaism and Christianity, influenced greatly the Mazdian faith. And this is not something bad. This is something that happens. Islam also influenced Christianity greatly. Christianity influenced Judaism greatly. And that is the result of existing together in the same place. So it's these kind of relationship, in the sense that they were there, and communities, I don't know if they intertwined or to what extent they did, but definitely they were existing together. And also in the sense of Christianity, you can see in the end, like the later text of the Avesta, there's the figure of a savior, of a world savior that will come at the end of the world. Sounds familiar. Yes. I've heard that before.
Yes, I'm very excited for that, because I'm just starting the research right now, but there is one of our kings who claims to be the savior and just arrives and just says, "Hello, I'm here now. My reign will last for 1,000 years.
Why
Let's
not?
see what happens." Mm-hmm. So that's going to be exciting to look into a bit further, because wow.
Yeah. They were very nice. You have to love them. You have to love the Sassanians.
They're great, yes, and I'm excited to go through them now over the course of the next year or so. We should be able to go through them all.
I was gonna say, the next 100 episodes.
There's only like 35 or something. It's not that many, according to our legitimacy.
They feel like 100.
There's like at the end, there's like a lengthening of the episodes, because there's like 3 years with 12 rulers, which is madness. But yeah.
I'm curious how I don't know if you want to say this like on the podcast, but I'm curious about how you're going to cover that, because that is mayhem.
That is mayhem.
That is pure chaos.
I am going to do the current plan, at least, is to just go through them in chronological order. And I know there's somebody who leaves and then comes back. I will cover them last.
Okay.
So it's going to be a hell of a mess, because terrible decisions were made all the time. But yeah, I'll try and do it chronologically. We'll see how it happens.
I'm very excited for that part, especially because I am excited to hear Sadia's reaction to the madness.
I love especially how it ends. It's just that everybody decides, nope, that's it, we're done. We're done. Just pick someone. I don't care. Just go.
You can't blame them, though. I mean, 12 kings, 3 years. Statistics really work against you.
That's worse than Italian governments. It's not good. But yes.
Can you say that in the podcast?
We've had a government every year since the war ended. It's it happens.
Okay.
It's on Wikipedia. They know. But there we go.
This'll be fine. Just normal things.
Yes, good fun stuff. And I think we've covered most of the points we had in mind. I don't know if Sariel, you have any questions, or Plumas, you had anything you wanted to emphasize especially, but on my side,
I want to emphasize especially how pleased I am to be here, and thank you for letting me just speak, because I have no limit.
It's great
I just start and it's never ending.
I'm so glad.
So thank you for the patience, and I hope that something that I said had any sense. Thank you for inviting me and considering me for this topic, which I'm not an expert in, but I'm really, really passionate about.
Yes, I mean, it's always great to have you, and you can tell that you're passionate. That's always a lovely thing to have in somebody speaking to you. And just before going, unless Sarah had anything else, Plumas, do you have anything you would like to plug? Anywhere people can find you, just so they know?
Oh.
Anything special coming up? I don't know.
Ooh. Maybe.
Maybe. Good start.
So they can find me on Twitch. If they Google Las Plumas de Simur, I will appear on Twitch. And also, I have a Discord server. People can join. It's lovely being there. And a Telegram channel that I use more like a board of announcements. So you can't miss, you want to miss things. Sometimes I post about exhibitions and just like a board of announcements. That is how I use my Telegram. And also there's a YouTube channel that I use as a library where I put all the videos from Twitch because I acknowledge people are not that familiar with the platform and they like listening to the streams in some other occasions. So yeah, feel free to come, say hi, and I love to meet all the listeners. Do they have a name?
I don't think they have a name. We haven't named them. They are just the nameless fans.
Okay, so I will be very happy to meet the nameless fans.
We should come up with something better.
Say hello to the streams. I am aware that multiple of my chat listen to you, and we have a wide variety of fans among us. And I say us because I include myself. We have teachers from uni, we have students, undergrads, elders, and also we have kids. There's a particular kid that enjoys this podcast a lot.
Thank you.
And you know who you are. And,
thank you who you are.
Yeah, and we're very big fans of the podcast. So it's always great coming here. It feels like coming home. Thank you again for inviting me. It is, yeah. I'm very, you know me. I just don't say things because I say things because I really think them truly. And again, thanks for listening to the Perso Turra because this has been a turra intense and.
Well, that's the entire point of this podcast.
You should come.
Don't worry.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, your podcast could be called the Perso Turra in Spanish. I know. And I would love for you to be back on my own Twitch channel, where you will be at some point.
It's always
Humberto
fun.
has already celebrated Yalda with us. Sariel, you're next.
All right, well, I'll get ready for that.
You have a community of fans to please.
Then I must.
Yeah. Anything for the fans. All right. Well, then, thank you so much, Plumas, for coming over. It's been lovely as always. And for everyone else, for all our listeners, we will be having the episode on Ardashir the First next week. So you'll be able to start and figure out who these Sassanids are and what their deal is, and wait, does he slay a dragon? What's going on? All that sort of thing. You'll find out next week.
Genuinely excited about that one.
Good stuff.
Thanks for listening, and I hope it wasn't too chaotic, both for all of our sakes and for the sake of Humberto editing this. So I hope it turned out okay.
Yeah. Editing Humberto, we love you. We appreciate your efforts.
Thank you. I appreciate it even now. So have a good week, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Clappers.